Having grown up in the Philadelphia area and having lived there for many years, I've noticed that a lot of the areas around where I used to live have people now that are very, very poor. And I think that the saddest thing to see are people that have no homes. Places that I went to school, there are places that I used to shop that have homeless people right outside the door. And so it's a problem that's not just in the inner city, it's a problem that's almost everywhere. And even when you travel, you often see homeless people near like the railroad stations and the airports. People kind of sometimes wonder, like, should you feed a person that's asking for something, or does that just, let them buy something that they shouldn't have?
Yeah.
Or should you, try to work with the person or speak with the person, or how should you best deal with a homeless person? I don't think there's any great answer other than, I think always we feel so sorry that the basic need that people have after food is a shelter, some place to lay your head at night. I think that's why it's so sad.
Go ahead. So, what do you like when you first think of homeless people? What's your first natural perception?
My first perception is, thank God that I've been able to be successful and been able to avoid the pitfalls of life that can affect those who are homeless.
Now, going to school in the city, what did you ever encounter homeless? See them around the campus? And
I went to St. Joe's, which is in West Philly, and from time to time there were homeless individuals around. I always it always made me uncomfortable, especially around the winter months, because you go back to your dorm, you go back to your apartment, you have a place to sleep, and they don't. And never mind place to eat, place to shower, clean clothes, all those things. So yeah.
And when you see somebody homeless, what do you think? Because there's people tell you shouldn't give them money. Some people do give them money. What do you think the best thing, how to handle the situation?
Try to put yourself in their shoes. If you needed money for something to eat or anything, or even just clean water, something as simple as that. I always give when I have a chance. Whenever I'm in Philadelphia or anything else, if I can spare $1 or some change, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
About it as much as I should.
Uh-huh.
But I remember years ago on nights like tonight, when we were coming back from retreat one year, and there were people in boxes on there, and some of our goofy people coming back from retreat were laughing about the whole thing, and that wasn't very nice.
Uh-huh.
But that was years ago, and now there are still homeless out there. And we have plenty of food in this country, and it seems like we should be able to get enough food to people who are homeless and can have something to eat.
It's true. Now, what do you do if you come across someone homeless? What do you think the best thing to do is?
Depends on what they want. Some people say you shouldn't give them money or stuff like this if they ask for it. Apparently, I'm afraid I usually do.
Because you find yourself caring for them.
Well, I'm not in that spot.
That's true.
So I just always figure if I was in a spot,
You would want the same thing
I'd
done
like
to you.
if somebody gave me some money, I wouldn't feel real bad about it. Or if somebody I knew was in that spot. If one of my charming little students fell upon harsh times, I would hope that somebody would be nice to them if they were in a bad spot.
Okay. Thank you.
Action News special report, the face of homelessness in Philadelphia. It is a changing phenomenon as more and more youths are struggling on the streets, fighting poverty with no place to go. Investigative reporter Wendy Saltzman has the story of 4 young people who are among those battling life on the streets of Philadelphia.
Well, Jim, even though the economy is looking up, many families are still trying to get back on their feet. In some cases, it's their kids that are left to fend for themselves. Shelters tell us they don't have enough beds to care for all the youngsters who desperately walk through their doors trying to escape a life of homelessness. Philadelphia's cold, dark streets hide a hard truth in the nooks and crannies, on subways, and behind the shadows. More and more of our kids are struggling to survive.
I actually slept right here. Now, this is not one of the best places, but it's good enough.
20-year-old Cahill Warren has been homeless for the last 4 years.
Me, I'm kind of like thinking, all right, I hope nobody sees me.
Abandoned by his family, the sidewalks of Germantown became his home.
Being homeless is really undescribable. Like, the only way you can actually describe it is by doing it.
Victoria Miller.
The first time I got kicked out of my mom's house, I was 15.
Anthony Robinson.
It's difficult, for someone who doesn't have a place to stay to make it out here.
And Jerica King are all homeless.
It's not easy in any aspect of the word of being homeless. It's a struggle in everything, finding food, finding shelter, finding clothing.
These 4 young adults have been homeless for between 3 and 5 years and have now found shelter at Philadelphia's Covenant House.
They'll ride the train if they don't have anywhere to sit until somebody says you have to get up. But it doesn't look like typical homelessness. They really try to hide in plain sight.
Covenant House Executive Director Cordella Hill says volunteers are seeing a lot more kids go hungry with no place to stay, often trying to hide the shame of their situation.
A lot of the kids that are homeless look no different than your typical 19 or 20-year-old. Many of them may be dressed in the same kind of attire, but we notice things like maybe the cleanliness of their hands.
It's very stressful because you never know where you're going to lay your head at the next day, and you never know if you're going to actually end up on the street or if you're going to get killed.
Robinson has been homeless for almost 5 years.
My life was pretty good until I turned 15, and that's when, my grandmother died and I started moving around.
From one friend's house to another, laying in doorsteps, sometimes in a shelter.
I've seen a lot of friends that I've known personally die. They turn into gangs.
Hill warns the Covenant House is now at capacity.
I'm scared right now for a lot of our kids.
If the community doesn't step in, she fears these youth may spend the rest of their lives as homeless adults.
I don't see how we're going to break the cycle. I don't.
Hill says it's impossible to count the number of homeless youth because these kids are often sleeping at friends' houses, in abandoned homes, or just walking the streets, catching a nap when they can. For more information on the Covenant House and a link to how you can help, just log on to our website at 6abc.com.
I'm curious to know if this phenomenon is linked to the economy or if it's independent of what has been a faltering economy until recently.
I think the problem is really that when the economy goes sour, it's those older kids, the kids that are 15 or 16, that the parents may kick out of the house. They're busy caring for the kids that are 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and the older ones are basically just left to fend for themselves.
Thank you, Wendy.
Some causes of homelessness.
First,
Poverty from lack of jobs at competitive living wages.
Philadelphia has a 27% poverty rate, one of the highest in the nation.
Second,
lack of adequate public supports and or earned benefits.
Third,
Lack of affordable transportation.
Housing and transportation are the top 2 largest expenses for the typical American family.
in Philadelphia, moderate income households, people spend 52% of their income on housing and transportation.
82% housing.
25% on transportation.
Fourth,
lack of affordable housing and inadequate housing assistance.
The impact of high housing costs falls disproportionately on extremely low, very low income, and low households, especially renters.
57% of all renter households spend more than 30% on rent and utilities.
84% of Philadelphians making less than $20,000 in 2013 paid 30% or more of their household income on housing costs.
Of poor households who pay more than 30% of income on housing, 70% of those spend more than 50% on housing.
42% of Philadelphia households are paying more than 30% of their income towards their housing.
Severe overpaying occurs when households pay 50% or more of their gross income for housing.
Fifth,
lack of affordable health care.
Sixth,
Domestic violence.
and seventh,
Inadequate support for mental health and substance use challenges.
94.1% of people living on the streets have behavioral health challenges.
12.1% mental health,
12% substance use.
And 70% a dual diagnosis.